And that top slide down in, in this spot here, the little water feature, it's only a quarter mile from any of the houses in the community, direct access. If there was a transit stop there, that would be a very small community, but it's a transit-ready arrangement. And this is a comment really maybe for the people in Minneapolis, focus on quality rather than quantity. We spend a lot of time in our communities talking about it's so big, it's too tall, it's too many units, it's too this, it's too that. Don't focus on the fact that most of us experience our development at the ground. So pay careful attention to how it's going to feel when you're walking by it. What's the street wall like? What's the first 2 or 3 stories if you're talking about a larger development? What's it feel like? Is it porous? Is it open? Is it inviting? Is it attractive? And that's really important, the quality of the development. How is the car managed? Is the car taking a big swath out of things? Or do you have trouble figuring out where they even put the cars? Then you got a good project. Again, get out to your neighborhoods and support well-designed projects. Those 80% of the people that support this never show up at the projects I'm working on. It's always 99% of the people that oppose them. Encourage public-private collaboration. I think this is a time more than ever that we need to join arms, recognize that the private sector brings resources, expertise, capital. Public sector brings lots of great things to the table. We need to work together more than ever to make this change happen. As I said earlier, I'm working on the Transportation for America, tforamerica.org, I think is the website, which is trying to rally a broad constituency, my job is to get those in the real estate community on board with these ideas. There's many that support them. We recognize if we want to build this stuff, if we want to respond to that 50% of the market, we need a different transportation system as developers. So we're very much supportive of that. We're looking at actually ways to get back in the game of financing it. The streetcar system in Minneapolis was actually privately financed by the developer because it improved the value of the lots. And so we're beginning to look at, well, gee, maybe we could start doing some of that again instead of it being 100% from the public sector. So this last slide, you all have seen this quote many times, but I think more than ever, we have some good leadership at the top, but the change is really going to happen by the people in this room and your colleagues getting out there and doing the heavy lifting. So thank you. Must be some questions for a developer.
Thanks. In a previous life, I was a county commissioner, and we would be sitting on the other side of the table, and I agree with you that a lot of times I think the system is designed to stop or slow these projects down. And so streamlining it makes a lot of sense, but do you have any good ideas to, for a city council or a county board to give up kind of their power? I think to me, I see that as the hardest obstacle to try to streamline the permitting process.
Yeah, one idea in the city of St. Paul, when they came in and did that vision plan that we built under, they actually set up after that a design center, a place that they directed developers. It wasn't public and it wasn't private. It was sort of a new deal. They borrowed some staff in the planning department. They hired some separate staff, and we can get you some more information on that. But developers were encouraged to go there to say, hey, how does my project fit into this plan? And there was actually staff there that wasn't the planning department that helped the developer understand what the larger goals were and literally get out a drawing pen and show them how they might need to change their plan to make it fit better. You never see a planner with a pen in their hand. And so it's like mostly what you'll get is, well, that doesn't really mean, well, what do you want? Well, you'll have to figure that out yourself. So it's a way of actually having the public sector participate in more like this, actually literally taking them by the hand and showing them what's wanted, what's desired. And I think that's helped. That's one idea. Because, the city government still has to approve it, but the chance of that application being stronger and being more in line with the overall goals is greater if there's been that help there that doesn't really exist in most communities. It's the private sector developer on his own looking at the comprehensive plan, which is a bunch of words, and trying to figure out what it is that's wanted. And so that middle ground, I think, in St. Paul has served them quite well.
Representative Mike Nelson. And a question I've got, and I'm looking at, and I had the same question for the earlier group. I see a lot of lack of jobs there. There's office jobs and there's retail jobs. But there aren't a lot of blue-collar jobs where the majority of our people live and work. And it's like they're not being planned into it. If I lived in that community and I had a blue-collar job, I'd have to go out of that community and increase my carbon footprint to go to work, to come back here to live. And I guess I I think back to my grandfather who lived in North Minneapolis and took the streetcar to his cabinet shop he worked in North Minneapolis, and he took it on Mondays and took it home on Saturday, but he walked the rest of the time. And there's not a lot of those jobs. We're getting those jobs and we're moving all those jobs out of this core. We're putting all this residential in there and office buildings in there, and those people don't have the jobs. They're having to drive without good transit out to those jobs where they are.
Well, I think that's a very legitimate critique and question to raise, so I think you want to keep raising that as you see plans getting developed. I think a lot of the jobs out there, even what you might call blue-collar jobs, could actually integrate quite well. That cabinet shop would not be a particular problem to have in a mixed-use neighborhood. There are other industrial jobs that need to be separated, and so I think more attention needs to be paid to the jobs that need to be separated, and how do we connect and serve those workers with transportation options. But I think, you know, a large share of the jobs, particularly as we look at the jobs into the future, can fit into these mixed-use developments. But I think it's a fair criticism that the ones that remain, that don't fit too well, let's look at how we're going to set those up. And I offered nothing on that, so I think that's a very good comment. So.
Actually, if I may, since
Yeah.
there was a question to the earlier group as well, I think there are a number of actual interesting examples of things that can and should not be done around the cities with this. I'm thinking of 280 going north. You've got Lauderdale on the right and that metal plant on the left. You know, there used to be access there, and of course it was shut down for a good reason because of all this extra traffic. But, you know, folks can live in the one and walk to the other. And so it's not only a land use issue, but it's a transportation issue to make sure that those connections are made and kept, because they used to be there. And if left to their own devices, and I'm not here to dump on anyone in particular, but, you know, transportation departments are just as soon cut off that access across that 280, right? Because that's not their job. Their job is to get people north, right? The other thing that occurs to me is there was a sort of a funny story, and I'm not even sure which way this goes, but they were building lofts down by Metalmatic. It was actually Metalmatic objecting. People wanted to live down there. They wanted to live next to the plant. They didn't care, right? But Metalmatic's like, you know, they're going to move in, and then they're going to complain, and we're going to be forced out.
And they did.
But I think that this gets back to now, everybody has now made this point. So, but this is where the community plan comes in, right? You don't do a piecemeal, because then Metalmatic doesn't trust you, and, you know, but if there's a plan, and everyone agrees to the plan, then Metalmatic says, hey, there was a plan. We're here, it's part of the plan, too bad. And I think that keeps the jobs in, and it gives them some confidence. And for that matter, the folks that wanted to live in a gritty industrial neighborhood get what they bought, right? And they don't have to worry about it. So I think that, once again, it's the community plan is the answer here.
I want to just pick up on what he just said. Every one of these comprehensive plans that we've just completed have a lot of land that's set aside for commercial and industrial. What I don't have is an answer to what those jobs are. I mean, that we've done some pilot projects for smart growth communities, and we have lots of land to set aside for jobs. But what I struggle with is, what are those jobs? And we really don't have a statewide job creation strategy. We really need to focus on what those jobs are going to be for the future. It does need to be a comprehensive plan, and certainly part of the community can be mixed-use nodes, but there are also going to be parts of the community that are going to be just residential and just commercial and just industrial, and they need to be put in the places that are best suited for those.
I think we'll take one more question, then I think we're going to hear from our sponsors.
Phyllis Kahn, I've got to make a comment first before on the Metalmatic issue. The funnier one there was the University of Minnesota's coal plant, who had spent all their time saying what a benign addition that was to the area, and they were also the protesters against that housing development, saying they're not going to like us being there. But what I wanted you to comment on, one of what I think is one of the more successful developments area, and that's the Lunds at Hennepin and Central and Northeast, and all of the development kind of in that area. Do you want to make any comments on the replication of that at possible places?
Yeah, I think that's a very bright example in Minneapolis recently. It maybe starts with the new attention to the riverfront that started and the improvements that were made there. to create a really attractive environment. There was a little nucleus of sort of a mixed-use neighborhood there to begin with, but there was some development